The first time that I saw the Gaiety Theater sign that screamed all-male burlesque, I was looking out the window of the yellow school bus that I was on with my Cub Scout troop, traveling from upstate New York through Manhattan on our way to Radio City to see the Rockettes. I must have been 10 years old. All the other Cub Scouts were singing a very rowdy rendition of our favorite bus song, Ravioli, I love ravioli, ravioli, it's the one for me. And they were super excited about the pictures that they had seen of the Rockettes. These long-legged dancers all posed with their legs up in a kick line with their crotches facing out. But here I was, looking out the window at West 46th Street at the sign that said all-male burlesque. Now, I didn't know what was going on up that stairwell. I didn't know what the 2 or 3 guys were doing who looked over their shoulder before they went up, but I knew I wanted to find out. I knew I liked boys the way most boys liked girls. As early as first grade, when I, on a very jammed-packed car ride with my family, got thrown in the back seat with my cousin John and sat on his lap, and I knew that I enjoyed it a little more than I was supposed to. In 5th grade, I played my first game of Spin the Bottle. I remember I was in Pat Farr's basement, and I remember we were all on different colored beanbag chairs, and I was acutely aware that I wanted the bottle to land on either Chip, Pat, or Billy. It didn't. It kept landing on Bridget, and if it did land on 2 boys, they just spun it again. It wasn't even an option. The climate in my town about gay was hostile, and my voice and my body betrayed me. I strutted where other boys walked, and I was beginning to be mistaken for my mother when I picked up the phone and said hi. By people like my father, who should have known better. All of my report cards said, Christopher spends way too much time talking to girls. Junior high was the worst. Gay got actually dangerous. People were calling me faggot in the hallway, and I took shit basically everywhere that I went. I told myself the best thing to do would just be to ignore it, that if I started fighting people that I would end up bloody every day. I never told anyone the truth. Neither did 2 of my friends who ended up as adults being gay as well. We didn't even tell each other. The only thing I felt like I had going for me was if I didn't act on it and I didn't do anything, then no one would have any proof. About this time, I started sneaking down to New York City with my buddy Agnes, as much as we could steal away on the short line bus. We were both outcast. She was Polish and overweight with the unfortunate last name of Spakowitz, and the kids were brutal to her as well. We felt free when we were in New York City. I loved the movie Fame. I loved listening to the soundtrack. I loved sitting on the steps of the High School of the Performing Arts pretending to be students. It was doing this that I saw the Gaiety again, and I recognized it, and my heart immediately started to beat faster. I steered Agnes over by the entrance, carefully noting that shows began on the hour beginning at 1 p.m. Later, I left her at the New York Public Library, and I ran the 4 blocks and 2 avenues it took for me to get back. I was as sneaky as everybody else going up there. I remember I looked over my shoulder and I thrust my chest forward in a pitiful attempt to look older, but the bored Puerto Rican lady taking tickets barely even lifted her head. It was just one crank of the turnstile, and then the hustle of the city was behind me. I remember when I walked inside, I remember it took a moment for my eyes to adjust to the blackness. Everything about this place felt forbidden. There were men everywhere, ranging in age from about 20 to 80, but nobody was looking at anybody. Everybody was too embarrassed and ashamed. I was petrified, I froze, I had no idea what I was supposed to do. I remember noticing that there was wallpaper in the lobby and that somebody had cared enough to hang it, but there were sweat marks where the dancers leaned against it to tie their shoes. I could hear the muffled sound of a movie, and I pushed the theater doors open and I went in. And there, on a big giant screen for the first time, gay pornography. I had never seen men having sex before. Young Johnny, taken as an apprentice under the big head mechanic, only to get up in a gangbang later at the garage. A Uncle Jack's buddy, who didn't look like any of my uncle's buddies and really wasn't a buddy at all. This was nothing like my friend Richard's older brother's dirty magazines. This bleach blonde named Sika, who was always spreading her legs and squatting over a chair. This was something exciting. This was actually new and dirty and something that I liked. Suddenly, the music stopped, and suddenly the movie stopped and music started to play. The screen went up into the ceiling and a small black box stage was revealed with a silver curtain behind it. An announcer blew into a microphone and said, "Gentlemen, Dino," and a construction worker sauntered out. He danced like he was in physical discomfort. He looked like he was in actual pain. He looked at us like he was angry, like we dared to look at him, and yet there he was, center stage. He took off one article of clothing at a time and dropped it, and then when he got down to his underwear, the song stopped and he entered the stage. He left the stage pissed off. We just all sat there. Nobody had thrown money, nobody whistled, nobody did anything like men do in movies. We just waited for him to come back. Suddenly a slower song started to play and he came back on stage, this time wearing nothing but a hard-on and his work boots. That's what had taken so long backstage. Everybody in the crowd went crazy. They were now whistling, they were now worked up, and he didn't even bother dancing anymore. He just proudly walked around displaying himself like a rooster in the hen house or a toddler who hadn't been schooled yet. After Dino came Carmine and then two more dancers after that. At lunchtime, it's only a 4-male burlesque show. And then the pornography came back. Afterward, the dancers all lingered in the lobby, but I was way too petrified and I ran down the stairs and ran out. I couldn't believe that I had been there an hour. Plus, I knew about Tina Turner's dancers, private dancers, dancers for money, do what you want them to do, and I only had $15. I ran back to Agnes and I bought her a pretzel on the way and I was nice all the way home on the bus. I didn't tell her why I ditched. Later that night I was home and I had a lot to think about. I knew that I wanted to go back. I knew that I wanted to be with a guy and I felt that it was just way too risky in my town. So I went back to the Gaiety in a month. I had my first experience with a guy there. It was on the fire escape to the left of backstage. I remember he was in his early 20s and I was probably 15. We locked eyes with that intuitive sixth sense that we have. I knew that he would follow me, and he did. It wasn't my ideal to hook up with somebody for the first time in a stairwell, but when I leaned in to kiss him, he obliged. There wasn't any chit-chat, there wasn't any numbers, there wasn't any words exchanged. I never told him it was really my first kiss. Afterward, there was just gripping and gasping and guilt, and then, like always, I ran out on the street and ran home. I didn't even really think about it on the way home on the bus. The 2.5 hours that time I went down there alone. The next time I hired a dancer, $60, hard-earned cash earned at my family's submarine sandwich shop. If I squinted in the dark, he looked a little bit like Leroy from Fame. I probably went 10 more times during high school. It was my secret that I didn't tell anyone about. I went back by that corner recently. I was in New York. My husband and I had dinner at Joanne's and were walking around the corner to see Idina Menzel. I looked at that corner and the Gaiety Theater is gone. The marquee, everything about that era. There's a Starbucks where the Howard Johnsons had stood underneath it. I told my husband about it. I smiled when I pointed it out. I was very proud of that kid who had done that, who had had the courage to find sanctuary and survive.